Welcome to the Marriage Course. We're so glad you've made the decision to join us, and we hope you'll not only benefit from, but also enjoy doing the course.
The aim of the Marriage Course is to strengthen the connection between you as a couple, or to restore that connection if you feel you've lost it. My name is Nikki.
And I'm Scilla, and this course aims to equip you with the tools to build a healthy marriage. We want to encourage you, whether you've been together for a short time or a long time, whether you're in a good place as a couple or you're struggling, whatever your situation, you've come to the right place.
Over the course, you're going to find out quite a lot about us. So we thought we'd start by telling you how we met. I was 18 years old. I'd just left school and I was going on holiday to Southwest Ireland. I arrived at Swansea Docks in an old green Mini and joined the queue for the car ferry. I was fascinated by this girl trying to peel a sticker off the car immediately in front of mine, and I sat and watched her for several minutes. Then a great friend of mine suddenly appeared at the car window and said, "Nikki, I want you to meet my friend Scilla." And she introduced me to this girl peeling off the sticker. Well, I became even more intrigued when she spoke to me. We ended up next door to each other on holiday for 2 weeks, and I fell madly in love. But I didn't dare say anything, just in case she didn't feel the same way.
I too had fallen for Nicky, but I also didn't dare say anything to him in case he felt nothing for me. Then, the day before I was about to leave to go home, there was a group of about 15 of us, all teenagers, playing a game in this huge old Irish house with all the lights off, called Bear in the Dark. Spelt B-E-A-R, as in the animal, just for the avoidance of any doubt. And Nikki and I just happened to find each other in the dark, in a room at the far end of this house, which was really my plan all along.
Actually, I think I engineered it.
Well, however it happened, that's when we had our first kiss and discovered that our feelings were mutual. So we started going out, and then 4 years later, we got married. Our experiences over the last 42 years have been typical of many couples. We've moved house 5 times, we've lived abroad for 3 years, we've experienced the birth of our 4 children together, Kirsty, Benj, Barney and Josh, as well as all the hundreds of broken nights that followed. We've known the exhaustion and the joy of having young children, and also the worries and the fun of parenting teenagers. Our children have all left home now, and 3 of them are married with children of their own, so we know what it is to be parents-in-law and grandparents. We've had times of illness and financial uncertainty, as well as times of really great shared memories and lots of laughter.
Our marriage has been an adventure of changing and growing together, continuing to get to know each other better over the years. And one thing we've learnt is that marriages need to grow. They can't remain static. This is one of the universal principles about marriage that this course is built on, principles that are relevant to any couple anywhere. And during each session, we're going to be hearing from couples who've done the marriage course all around the world, as well as hearing from relationship experts and psychologists on the topics and issues we'll be exploring.
And we're confident that as you engage with the material on the marriage course, you'll find out more about what your partner thinks and feels. Whether you've been together for 1 year or over 40 years, there's always going to be more to discover. And it's only as we continue on this journey of discovery about each other that we stay connected.
Now, some of you may still be wondering what you've got yourselves into. And people generally have 2 fears about doing a course like this. One fear is that they'll be required to reveal intimate details of their relationship to other people, and they don't want to do that. The second, and often the greater fear, is that their partner will be given the opportunity to reveal intimate details of their relationship to other people, and they certainly don't want to risk that.
And if that's you, you'll be pleased to know you won't be asked to discuss anything about your relationship with anybody else. Instead, we'll be pausing at various points to allow you as a couple to discuss issues that we've raised. And for many couples, these conversations are the most useful part of the course.
So, you've heard a bit about us. Now, we want you to turn to the first conversation in your journal and spend a few minutes thinking back to the first time you met. Tell your partner your strongest memory of that first meeting and what it was that first attracted you to each other.
The marriage course is very practical. It's designed to equip you with the tools that we all need to create and maintain connection between us.
And while from time to time we'll quote from the Bible and occasionally talk personally about the difference our own Christian faith makes to us in our marriage, we're confident you'll find everything relevant to you and your relationship, whether or not you have a Christian faith or indeed any religious faith at all.
The course is based on the premise that marriage has the potential to be the closest, most intimate human relationship possible. The Bible uses the image of two people coming together and becoming one. Right at the start of the Bible, in the 2nd chapter, it says, "For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they'll become one flesh."
So, when we get married, our partner becomes our first loyalty. And we're joined together, not just physically, but emotionally, psychologically, and even spiritually. Some people might say, but what about a parent and child? Isn't that closer? After all, a child starts off life physically attached to his or her mother. But the task of parenting is to encourage increasing independence in children, both physically and emotionally. Marriage is the other way around. Marriage involves two people who at one time were complete strangers to each other. They meet, they fall in love, they get married, and embark on a relationship that's designed to be one of increasing intimacy and of a growing interdependence. But that's not automatic. We have to keep working at our marriage if we're to stay closely connected.
It is the very modern notion that love is just a feeling. And when that feeling goes, we can just walk away. But I know this, unless sometimes you fight to keep love alive, you will bounce from relationship to relationship, always searching for this perfect person that might be out there. I go to write my books in a little cottage overlooking Carmarthen Bay in West Wales. And a couple of years ago, I think it was an August day, it was a beautiful day, and I'm walking on the beach, and the hills look lovely, and the sand looks gorgeous, and the sea looks as though somebody's taken 1,000,000 diamonds and scattered them along its surface. And as I made my way back up to the cottage, there's an old fisherman there. And I said, "It's idyllic, isn't it?" Perhaps he was just tired of tourists that day, and he barked at me, "You should see it in winter." And honestly, when I walked on the beach the next day, it was equally lovely. But I felt the sea and the sand and the hills whisper to me, "Would you love us in winter?" Winter love comes to every relationship. And you know, it's remarkable. I so often meet couples who are about to split up and decide, we're going to try again. And I meet them 5-10 years down the road, and they are more in love than they ever thought possible. And they look back and say, how could we have thought of even splitting? But to do that, they had to overcome this very modern idea that if you don't feel in love, just walk away.
Our daughter Kirsty and son-in-law Rick are involved in making sparkling wine on the south coast of England. And Nikki and I have learnt a lot from them about the work that goes into tending a vineyard in order to produce good wine. It's hard work. It requires care and attention of the vines on a regular cycle throughout the year, every year. And this is a good analogy for looking after our marriage. It takes work to look after a marriage and requires care and attention on a regular basis. We've taken 4 analogies from tending a vineyard. Now, while all 4 apply, whatever stage we're at in our relationship, it may be that one of the 4 is the most important for you right now, as a result of the particular season that you're in. The first analogy is adjusting. Newly planted vines have to adjust to the new soil, and this is a process that goes on for at least 3 years.
In a similar way, in the early years of a marriage, we have to learn to adjust to each other as we move from I to we, from being independent to being interdependent.
And this adjusting isn't always easy. So often when the initial infatuation has worn off, when we've taken off those rose-tinted glasses and we see each other in a new light, it's the very things that attracted us to each other that can become the things that annoy us about each other.
I'm Dimas Salaberios.
I'm Tiffany Salaberios.
We met at a church in Queens, New York.
New York City.
I was coming out of the church, she was coming in, and I grabbed the door, grabbed her hand, started to shake it, and I just had a loss for words.
One of the most attractive points of Dimas is he is so dynamic and charismatic and just like a magnet when he comes into the room. And so that's wonderful, right?
I love, I'm attracted to she's a strong woman. So that was one of the things that attracted me to her. She has a lot of opinions and she's a thinker, though, very passionate about things. So those were those things that were like, wow, I love her for this. This is amazing. This is the woman I want. But then there's some days you're like, whoa, the passion is intense. The opinions are really big. So I think that there are definitely those things that would attract a person. At times are those things that are sometimes much to handle in some moments.
As we discover how different we are, we can easily try, sometimes consciously, sometimes subconsciously, to change our partner to be more like us. Now, over the years, I have to admit, I have tried to change Nicky in all sorts of areas, and in some, I'm still trying. For example, I am still trying to get him to allow more time to catch a train or a plane, and to get him to wear any other coloured sweater than blue, and also to try to stop him cleaning his shoes when we're about to leave the house to go somewhere. But I've discovered that trying to change Nicky to be more like me doesn't work. It's a universal principle of marriage. I can change myself, but I can't change my partner.
If we're to stay connected, this adjusting has to happen, not just at the beginning, but all the way through our marriage, because change is a fact of life. It's inevitable. Our circumstances change, we'll both change, and our relationship has to keep adjusting to accommodate these changes. Your conversations during the course will help you to recognize where you need to adjust in order to strengthen your connection and your marriage. The second analogy from tending a vineyard is pruning, and vines require a lot. Pruning is a very positive activity for the vine. It involves prioritizing the most important branches and cutting the other ones off in order to direct the vine's energy into the most fruitful branches. Otherwise, you get lots of leaves, but very little fruit. As life gets busier, maybe through having a child or work getting more demanding, a key skill in marriage is prioritizing, which involves pruning back certain areas of our lives in order to prioritize another.
And for couples who have children, so much time and energy can go into looking after them that the marriage can easily be neglected. And when that happens, it's the children who suffer most, because a child's security is deeply affected by their parents' marriage.
I remember one man on the marriage course saying, "I've just realized that the best way to love my children is by loving my wife." As life gets busier, we'll only survive as a couple if we learn to prioritize our marriage relationship over every other demand on our time.
I am married to someone who works a lot, and he likes his work a lot.
So I'm a lawyer, and it's time-intensive work. I think navigating that is an area of continued work for us. I was on a case, it was a crazy schedule. We were trying to meet a deadline by, and I remember quite clearly she reached out by phone to say, "Do you have time to talk to me?" And I said, "No, I don't." And then she tried to call, and I picked up just to answer and say, "No, I can't talk right now." And then I almost hung up the phone on her.
I really felt quite abandoned because you have planned on someone leaving, but you don't plan on them not having time to even take a phone call.
I really need to plan in advance and realize that just because I have responsibilities at work doesn't mean my responsibilities to my wife and to my family fade away into the background and are no longer there.
Anytime that we have gotten too much into thinking we're doing this as individuals and not as a team or as a unit, that's when we have felt pretty isolated.
The third analogy from tending a vineyard is supporting. In order for vines to flourish, they need to be supported. The investment in a good, well-kept trellis system of posts and wires is vital for the production of good fruit. Similarly, a marriage needs a support system if we're to work through challenges and to thrive over a lifetime. A marriage can't survive in isolation. This support network may include friends and family, or support may come from an older married couple whom we watch and learn from. But as well as having support from others, it's essential that we support each other.
We'll all face some big challenges along the way. Maybe a serious illness, maybe financial or job insecurity, perhaps facing infertility, or adjusting to the empty nest, or looking after an elderly parent, to name a few.
Personally, I found the change from parenting young children to parenting teenagers pretty challenging. Parenting teenagers didn't come so naturally to me as it did to Nicky, and I really needed his help not to over-worry or over-control them, to listen to them and to give them space to grow in their independence. And Nicky's support made a massive difference during those years.
If we try to deal with our fears and challenges on our own, we lose connection with each other and can start to feel lonely within our marriage. Whereas, when we support each other, the very challenges we face can draw us closer together.
So I'm Pam, and this is Neil.
Yeah.
And we met
when we were 20.
We did, so that's 29 years ago. And we met in a little place in the east coast of Fife in Scotland. Yeah, I think the biggest challenge that we've faced is we kind of both came into marriage and we thought we would have a family, and that has not happened for us. And as a woman, you're kind of, you know, there's this inbuilt thing about, you know, being a mum, having a baby. But I think the fundamental thing was about loss of that dream. We've had to walk through that together.
Had maybe expectations that I would maybe take on have one of my children to get married, and I would take my daughter down the aisle, or, you know, maybe a son's graduation or something.
Somebody gave a very helpful piece of advice to me when I was kind of pouring out my heart about this one day, and they said, you know, it's not just your arms, Pam, that are empty, it's Neil's arms as well. And again, just that focus off myself onto the other, I think was really helpful.
There was a whole piece where I had to really kind of go deep in myself to really support her, because I was about to kind of lose it at times as well. And so it really brought us together, closer together. And
my learning about Neil would be that he was there, and he was completely dependable and strong in that. Although he had his own moments of vulnerability, I think you were definitely strong when I needed you to be strong. I think we had to really keep our communication open with one another, because it would be very easy to get into not sharing and withholding or blaming. I think it definitely did make us stronger.
Yeah.
We want you to turn in your journals to the next conversation, working through challenges, and talk about those that you've worked through together in the past.
And then, when you've done that, identify the main challenge either or both of you are facing currently. And ask your partner, in what ways could I support you in working through this challenge? The fourth analogy from tending a vineyard is renewing. At the end of the growing season, when the vine is reduced to a stem and a few bare branches, to an uninformed eye, it looks like there's not a lot going on until the buds appear in the spring. But that's not the case. This is a vital time when the vine is putting its energy into extending its roots deeper into the soil. The vine is resting while its roots are fed with compost in order to renew strength and produce a good crop next year.
We all need times of renewing in our marriage. People sometimes think that the longer we're married, the more that the love and the sparkle between us will decline. But that's not true. As vines mature, they continue to produce fruit and great wine decade after decade if they're well tended and the roots are fed.
It's the same in a marriage. Renewing means continually taking care of our relationship, particularly when we reach a new season of marriage. Renewing involves being prepared to talk about our own individual needs and desires, sharing with our partner our hopes for our future together. Renewing means slowing down for long enough to decide on changes we'd like to make, possibly stopping certain activities in order to have more time together, or starting something new, perhaps deciding to create a new pattern in our day or our week or our year that will strengthen or restore the connection between us.
And if you're struggling in your marriage, we want to encourage you that reconnecting is possible. When things are difficult, it can seem like there's an invisible wall that is built up between us, usually made up of small things, moments of hurt and misunderstanding that have built one on top of the other.
However, we've seen when couples have tended their relationship, things have changed dramatically, and they go on to experience a new connection and intimacy.
There was a time in our marriage where we did start to grow apart, and we ended up spending about 8 months separate. And it was like building a wall because we stopped communicating. And each time a jibe or a dig or a sarcastic joke at the other's expense got made, it was like another brick in the wall, until eventually the wall was too high and we couldn't even peer over it, much less see each other at the other side of it. And how we dismantled that wall was through communication and realising that we really loved each other and we really wanted the marriage to work. And we had to be humble, we had to own our faults and take responsibility. And together we managed to, brick by brick, dismantle the wall until we could really see each other again.
I think for me, I had to understand that I wanted the marriage to work, but that meant something had to change, whether it's our attitude to each other. I think we had to establish trust between us to start with, and then start to communicate and court again, and have a laugh again, and build it back up again nice and slowly.
Yeah, the laughter had gone, and we started to laugh again.
This next conversation is an opportunity to review your relationship, and we'd encourage you to be honest. The purpose is to give you a snapshot of your relationship now to affirm what's good and to discuss what's not working so well. And don't use this as an opportunity to attack your partner. Rather, as you stand back and see some of the trends in your relationship, look at what you could do differently for the sake of your marriage.
So please turn to reviewing your connection in your journal. Put a number in the box beside each of the 20 statements. 0 if that statement is never true, 1 if it's rarely true, and so on. Then turn over and follow the instructions. Each of you do it on your own. And when you've finished, show each other and discuss what you've put. This is a longer conversation, so we're going to give you 30 minutes.
And don't worry, if you have low scores, they could change rapidly, even after this session.
What is good?
When you saw your partner's answers, it may have come as a surprise or even a bit of a shock to some of you. But whether it has or not, we want to encourage you that it's much better to get talking about these things, to get things out into the open, because then as you discuss them, there's the potential for better understanding and a realization of where we need to change.
We're going to spend the rest of this session looking at 2 particular things that we can all start to do straight away to strengthen or restore the connection between us. The first is to make time for each other as a couple on a regular basis. And the second is to nurture each other.
Making time for the people that matter most in our lives doesn't just happen. It requires a conscious decision to make it happen. We can so easily say, we'll have some quality time next week or next month when life isn't so busy. But then, when we get there, we find we're just as busy. It's amazing that we can fit in time for any number of emergencies at work, but then not make time for our partner.
Depriving a marriage of quality time together is a bit like depriving a plant of water. Some plants survive longer than others, but eventually, without water, every plant will wither and die. If a relationship is to thrive and to keep growing, we must have regular quality time alone together. This does several things. It keeps the fun, friendship, and romance alive. It deepens our appreciation, our understanding of one another. And it gives us the opportunity to communicate regularly at a meaningful level.
And it took us a while, but eventually Nikki and I realized that if we were to have this kind of time together, we had to organize it. And that has meant putting aside time to do something enjoyable together once a week. Now, we call this our date night, and we'll refer to this a lot during the course, although sometimes we have it at lunchtime or over breakfast. And we'd say it's probably the single most significant thing that we have sought to do over the years to keep our love alive and our marriage growing.
Date night for us is a fun time when we're relaxing and doing something different to our normal routine. And it always involves some sort of a meal. Sometimes we make it an evening together at home. We cook a nice dinner, we put candles on the table and put on some music. Or we might decide to watch a film or a TV program together we both enjoy. When our children were little, it was after they were in bed. When they were teenagers, we banished them to their rooms.
And sometimes we'll go out for a meal, or we might go to the cinema or do something else that we both enjoy doing, such as going for a walk somewhere nice, playing tennis or some other sport, taking a picnic to the park in the summer, going for a bike ride or going to an exhibition. The important thing has been not to set the bar too high. It doesn't need to be expensive.
I remember one time we went and just got coffee. I like a nice meal out, but then again, I'm married to the budgeter.
Nice meal coffee.
Yeah, nice meal coffee. It's kind of true.
It reminds us of who we were before we got married and why we were attracted to each other in the first place. It really has made all the difference for us.
It just being different to the normal nights. Doing really easy food or ordering in or you cooking, that's not happened.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. We do what we call marriage time every week. So we go out and have coffee and just spend our time talking.
There's a beautiful thing here in Mexico called Pueblo Mágicos, which is like magic towns. Magic towns. We love that, doing that together.
Our son has showed us how to do Netflix, so our world is expanding.
We made it a point every Monday. Everybody knew on that day, Maki and Princey are out, nobody could connect with them.
We have had some date night fails, but even a date night fail is a win. Valentine's Day, we'll go see this movie.
And it was a horror film, and basically we lasted about 10 minutes. Well, I couldn't handle it, let alone you.
I was harrowed. It was terrible, but we're still talking about it.
Yeah.
A memorable date night for me was when Nikki organised a surprise trip to Shakespeare's Globe Theatre to see Romeo and Juliet. Now, I love surprises, but when we got there, I found out that he had booked the standing tickets, the cheapest ones on offer, which means you literally have to stand there for the entire performance. And Romeo and Juliet, much as I love it, is a long play. We ended up standing in the open air for over 4 hours straight.
I discovered when we got there that if I just paid a little bit more, we could have had a bench to sit on undercover.
And he'd also made a really delicious picnic, which we had to eat sitting on the concrete floor so as not to lose our place near the stage. However, it was a very memorable evening, and I loved it.
And I really enjoyed it too. So our own experience has been that investing in this weekly date protects our marriage from becoming dull, boring, and routine. It stops us from taking our relationship for granted and helps us to stay connected. It's a very simple concept, but it has a very powerful impact. We definitely know the difference and the benefit in our relationship when we've had this time together.
So here are 3 tips which have really helped us to make a weekly date an ongoing reality. We know we have to plan them, prioritize them, and protect them.
So, tip 1, plan them. We want to suggest that you plan this quality time together into your calendar, just like you would any other social or business appointment.
And Nikki and I have made it a golden rule never to change our date night in our calendar without consulting the other.
The second tip is prioritize them. This means it's the most important commitment we stick to every week. It takes priority over all other activities, our work, going out with friends, playing sport, watching TV, decorating the house, even over our children. Now, it's not that all these things aren't important, but unless date night is a priority, it'll be pushed out by these other things.
And the third tip is protect these times from external demands that conspire to stop them happening, whether that's other people, the phone, or being online and social media. It's different things for each of us as couples. And for us, it has particularly been the phone. We've realized we have to turn our phones off and put them away so that we are not constantly distracted by alerts or notifications on the screen. And by doing so, we're saying to each other, you're the most important person to me, and I'm giving you my full attention.
Effort and creativity are needed in every marriage. And if you think about it, effort and creativity are what many people pour in at the start of their relationship, but not necessarily into their marriage. If we stop making the effort, it's then that the connection between us can be lost.
I'm John, and this is Sally. We met at university in 1959.
I had seen his picture. He was in a play at University of Wisconsin, is where we were. And I liked his picture. I think as far as quality time, when he was so busy, I think we did what we could to remedy it. It wasn't always possible.
There were times when I was working maybe 65 or 70 hours a week. And I still remember, and this went on for a long time. I mean, we would communicate, but they were about very practical things. And I remember taking, it was the first time we ever took a vacation away from the children. We found a young couple to stay with the children. We went off to a resort in Mexico. And I remember sitting in the dining room and looking across the table at her and saying to myself, you know, I really don't know this person. It was like we knew each other at the beginning, and now all of this stuff had gotten in the way, and we really weren't talking about things that really mattered. I think at some point the marriage would have really worn out, and that would have been sort of the end of it.
I don't remember that time as significantly as you do, but I'm glad it happened. I didn't know it was that significant.
Well, I think it was kind of a wake-up moment, really. In some ways, I think it was the best thing that ever happened to our marriage, because when we got back from this vacation, we always set aside time during the course of a week just to be alone, to talk about things other than the kids and school and work and where we're going to get the next groceries and all that kind of. And I often thought, you know, what would have happened had we not had that moment, you know, and that realization. It was really an amazing time, really.
The next conversation in your journal is special times together. We want you to tell each other what have been the most special times you've shared together as a couple.
And be specific and talk about where and when those times were, what you were doing and why they were so special to you. And take it in turns, because you may hear something that you had no idea about. The second way to strengthen or restore the connection between you, something that you can start right now, is to nurture each other. Nurturing each other involves seeking to meet each other's emotional needs, such as for affection, encouragement, support, comfort, and so on. And this creates emotional connection between us.
We all have a longing to be known and to be loved by another person. It's as though there's an empty space inside us that needs to be filled up with another person's love and attention. When that space is empty, we feel lonely or alone. A new kitchen, promotion at work, or a holiday in the Caribbean won't fill up that space. And that's because we're made for close relationships. And that's why, when we fall in love, that space inside us is filled up. The first 2 chapters of the Bible give a fascinating account of how we're made for relationships. After God's repeated refrain in chapter 1 about creation, "It is good," suddenly, in chapter 2, God says, "It is not good for the man to be alone." Then, when God creates Eve and presents her to Adam, he bursts out spontaneously with the words, "This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." Here is someone like him, someone who understands him, someone to whom he can relate and to whom he's strongly attracted. And that space inside Adam is filled right up.
And when we're known intimately, when we're loved by another, we are no longer alone. However, we have to maintain our sense of togetherness. When the initial infatuation wears off, we can start to feel alone, to feel lonely again. And the way to keep filling this space inside is by recognizing and meeting each other's emotional needs.
We need to reach for other people and how other people respond all our lives. The attachment theory of childhood relates to marriage in that it basically tells us what our vulnerabilities and our needs are, and that these vulnerabilities and needs continue into adulthood. And it tells us about the basic drama that plays out in love relationships. The consequences of a couple not being able to recognize each other's emotional needs is that they are going to get more and more disconnected from each other. And as we understand from all our research over the years, the key issue in marriages falling apart is not conflict. Everybody has conflict. Everybody's got differences. The key issue is emotional disconnection. It's aloneness that destroys marriages. It drives people insane to be in a relationship where all their longings for connection are turned on, where they expect some sort of closeness, and to have that other person just out of reach. And these needs are not complicated. That's the fascinating thing. They're not. But they are emotional. And you do have to deal with them on an emotional level.
There are 2 ways we can act in marriage. We can either be reactive or proactive. Being reactive is when we focus on each other's shortcomings, on what irritates us about our partner's behavior. And that pushes us apart. We lose connection. Being proactive is when we focus on our partner's needs. And that draws us together because then we both feel loved. And when we feel loved, we feel like loving. Being proactive builds connection.
And we learned a lot about meeting emotional needs from a couple called David and Teresa Ferguson. I remember David describing a fundamental change in their marriage. For the first 15 years, I focused on Teresa's faults and my needs. For the last 15 years, I have focused on my faults and Teresa's needs, and our marriage has been transformed.
We all have these emotional needs, but usually our needs will not be the same as our partners. And to nurture our husband or wife effectively, we must discover what matters most to them.
我们来自北京，已经结婚15年了，我们有2个孩子。我们在过去的时候我真的不是一个很会聆听和回应他的一个这样的人，所以每一次他在分享一些事情，分享完以后我都会很困扰，我不知道该怎样去回应他。有一次他的就是肚子疼，然后跟我去聊这个事情，有几次说 老公我肚子有点疼，然后对我来讲，我是一个特别理性的人，我就想肚子疼怎么办呢？去医院还是忍着？然后他告诉我说，你可不可以对我说一些安慰的话？我说你能教一下我怎么样才能安慰你，你才开心？然后他就特别生气，说你连安慰都不会。我才发现，原来倾听别人、回应别人是一个非常简单的事情。所以我就开始去重复他的话，肯定他的感受，再询问他你有什么样的帮助。然后他就很受安慰，他说就是这样的，你这样说我就能得到很多被理解，你就进入到我的内心的世界里面。然后呢，我就其实也用这个方法来表达我的感受，他也非常吃惊。
我觉得，原来不是我一个人这样，其实他也把自己封闭在他的情感世界里面。
我们在那个时刻就感觉到，我们俩的心走在一起了。
With emotional needs, we can easily miss the ones that are most important to our partner, or we may give what we most want to receive. And trying to love in the wrong way can lead to frustration and irritation instead of feeling loved. It's like trying to fill a glass, but misjudging where it is. Our efforts will be wasted. And that's what happens when we don't know each other's needs.
And our needs will change over time. What was most important when we were going out or when we were first married may be different now. And we can't assume that our partner automatically knows our desires. We must tell each other. We want you to have a conversation now where you're going to find out how well you know each other's needs. And you'll see in your journals, it's called Knowing Me, Knowing You.
So, look at the list of 16 needs or desires. And in column A, put the 3 that are most important for you in order of importance. There's some overlap between them, so choose the 3 that best express your desires. Then, in column B, guess which 3 are most important to your husband or wife in order of importance. Now, do this without looking at what the other has put, and when you've both finished, compare what you've each put.
They are.
At this point, we want to mention the continuing conversations in your journal. Following this session, there are 2 topics. The first is about how you create a balance of time together as a couple and time apart from each other. The second is about how you can meet each other's emotional needs in practice. And we recommend that you set aside some time before the next session to look at those questions together, as it'll reinforce these 2 ways of strengthening your connection.
And to close each session, we're going to say a short prayer for you. So do please stay just as you are while we pray. Thank you, Lord, that you are the God of love, the God who created marriage for us. Thank you that you've given us to each other.
We ask that you would help each couple to grow in their understanding of their partner and help them to recognize each other's needs so that their love for one another would grow stronger and deeper. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
We hope the conversations you've had this session have been helpful and will lead to more useful discussions over this coming week.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you on the next session.
No.
What was the question again, Joan? That's this.
I didn't know where to
I
look.
feel truly loved.
What was the question? Well, can you tell me the initial question
Say
again?
what you said again.
So look at Joe's eyes or the camera.
I know. Yeah, I'm just.
These people are looking at us now. They're like, we know way more about them than we ever wanted to.